I'm moving forward every day, Jesus. I just let him lead the way every second, every minute, every hour of the day. I'm moving with Jesus every day. See, 24/7 with Jesus every day. See, 24/7. I'm moving, see, with Jesus. I'm moving, see, Jesus every day.
Welcome back. We're here with the Seeley family again for part 2 of our interview on our series on well-being. This time we're going to be talking about management and coping. So we would have gone through the experience through the pandemic and how they were able to maneuver the crisis, and now we're going to talk about specific ways in which they were able to cope. So welcome back again to the Seeleys. Let's start off with coping strategies as a family. What did you do? What are some of the things that you did to cope as a family? And I particularly want to talk about spirituality and how that played a role in your coping.
Well, that was a big part. A big part. I think, as we shared earlier, that we did feel some of the emotions that everyone would have felt, the fear, the anxiety, sometimes the surreal feeling that we are in a pandemic, so the emotions were there. Some of the thoughts were, as expressed, we thought of how can we go on, sometimes in different areas. So we did have all of that, but spirituality played a big part, especially for me. My faith was my anchor. My faith was my anchor. It was, something that a space or a place that I went to really help me with dealing with what was happening. As well, that not only was it a coping method for me personally, but because of what I do as a chaplain and as a counselor, that too was the avenue that I was used to help others. So I was really, during this time, constantly in the Word of God. During this time, I was constantly encouraging others. I was called upon to pray and to intercede with others. And so during this pandemic, my personal spiritual life was, I got closer to God. Mm-hmm. There's so many things. My thought patterns, the things that I thought about, changed during this pandemic. And it really was as a result of using that my spirituality to get through this time.
I remember, as trying to call the family to worship, and it proved a little challenging because, your time, your day was now a little different. Your waking time.
Yes.
And so should you still call the family at 6 o'clock in the morning for worship, or should you sleep in and get up a little later for worship? Those were some of the real issues that you had to face as family leader. Also as a church leader, because I was the first elder during the first year, having to meet the spiritual needs of the church and how to do it, and it did prove a challenge how to continue church. And we may not notice, and we sometimes don't appreciate the efforts that church leaders make during crises, but it was almost like people just expected church to continue.
Yes.
And their spiritual needs met.
Yes.
And they were critical of things not being done properly, things not being ready on time, and you had to cope with that as leader.
Yeah.
And so we could be a little more understanding. I think in a family setting, the expectations are different, but the expectations are there anyway. And so I had to, as my wife said, I had to draw on God to maintain my spirituality. And it proved, the crisis proved to us that church can be done differently.
Yeah.
Family can be done differently. You know, modernity and industrialization and fast-paced living has dictated to us that this is the way family should be done.
Right.
And this is the way church should be done. And the crisis taught me, that it can be done differently with the same or better results.
Right.
You know, and so I examined that and really tried to do church differently and to do family differently. So the worship times were called later, you know, sometimes 12 o'clock in the day when everybody up and
Yeah, because we're in a curfew. So everybody is sleeping and we had to adjust.
Yeah, so you know, so it did have that. It didn't affect the spiritual life, but it kind of modified your spiritual practice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just to piggyback again on that, I think one of the things again is the spirituality that really anchored me, and the church on a whole. You know, it was so awesome to see the Seventh-day Adventist Church going through this crisis in such a positive way. You know, to see all the content that was coming out, whether it's over Zoom, whether on YouTube, you saw churches adjusting and, you know, creating content, and it was fantastic. I mean, I am someone who always would go up on YouTube looking for spiritual content, and normally you have to go to other faiths,
yes,
you know, for that. But it was so amazing to see our faces,
yes,
to hear our sound,
like a spiritual
to hear,
being met.
yes, you know, and
Yes.
that again was really, really helpful. I could remember sometimes now on Sabbath you're moving from one church to another church. It's like all day church hopping, and I was just like on a high, you know. So that really, really helped. So seeing the church at work and how the church. And even South Caribbean Conference, how they were in the early planning the programs, those were really, really helpful, and sort of give us a calm, you know, as we go through this.
right.
That was one of the things that really helped.
And what about you guys?
Well, with this pandemic, it kind of made me more active with my spiritual life, or maybe become active, I should say, because it kind of made it, again, the fear and uncertainty. I had to turn to God more. You know, you had all these questions and doubts and worries. I kind of just like, well, yeah, God, what am I going to do? You know, stuff like that. And I think I want to say this is like my first time experiencing God or actually seeing His hand, because I remember when USC was, well, Mom and Dad with the work and the pay and stuff like that, and things were cutting down on salaries.
Salary deductions.
Yeah, I was really worried.
Talk about that.
Yeah, I was really
Talk
worried
about it,
because it's like, what's going to happen at home? Because as again was in the early part of the pandemic, or it was where it was like there's no end. Things are going back to normal.
Right.
So I decided to take like a more proactive role and say, well, the Air Guard, Coast Guard, all those services were opening up for recruits, and I was like, well, yeah, I'm going to go and do it.
Really?
Yeah. I was like, I'm going to go and do it because that's a way I can bring some money in.
Wow.
Right? Knowing I really don't want to do that, but it would help out at home. Went through all the process, did the exam, getting ready for the physical, got the dates, everything like that. And then I got a call saying that, well, and that's when I just finished USC too.
Yeah.
I just finished USC, just graduated, and you know, everything was new. And then it was like, well, we're looking for a music teacher at CUC. Interview is on the same day of the physical for the Air Guard. And I was like, I really felt God was like, if you had just wait, or like you try to take matters into your own hand. So I went through everything, but let me show you how. If you just wait on me,
right.
or let me show you what I could do and answer you. Ask the answer, but you still went. And I think that was kind of the first time I realized that patience, like when you really go and ask God for something, is to have patience and wait for Him to answer.
That's golden.
Yeah, because so I would always talk about that the job where I'm at now, I'm doing what I love. I really love teaching. I'm comfortable. I get to finish school. I don't have to wake up early and run nowhere for no training, and I still get to help out at home. And God really just handed that off to me and taught me a lesson. I was like the first spiritual growth.
Yes.
So Roland was talking about doing worship at 12 o'clock. So you all didn't think that was too late to have worship, or how did that work into?
I think one of the ways that we were able to transition so smoothly in some areas in and out of the pandemic was because of the traditions we would have had from before. So it wasn't a new thing to have worship in the morning, or I'll be home and we had nothing to do, waking up and having worship because we had nothing to do. We always had worship.
Okay.
As it was not a new thing for us to come home after work and watch a movie in the night or sit down and talk outside. That was not a new thing as well. To have dinner on Friday nights and Saturday during the day, to have lunch together and stuff. These wasn't new ideas that we now had the time to do, so we was trying to start. So I could hear lots of experiences from other families and other people. The transition was rough because they will now have a lot of time to do things and was now trying to start or establish things in their family. So it was a lot easier for us because we already had most of these traditions doing. It was just how to apply it to the time that we was in, which would have been the pandemic.
Like shifting the time.
Shifting the time.
That's what
So in some cases, we would shift it later if everybody home.
Yeah.
Or when I was going out, we have to shift it everybody waking up, but they have no work, only me working. But since we want the whole family to worship, everyone will wake up and we have worship and I'll go out and then go back and sleep. So it's those kind of things that we used to do before, so the traditions will just continue and just find a way to adapt it.
There's just one thing as I wanted to say on how we cooked, or how I cooked, and I think it's related to spirituality. Health, exercise, taking care of our physical well-being was very, very important. And it became very important to me during this time, eating well, ensuring that you do that, have some sort of physical activity so that your immune system is protected and it stays strong. Now, I believe that there is a link between our physical well-being and our spirituality.
Correct.
And so that was paramount. And for me, to take care of my health, to take care of my physical strength, and that was one of the coping mechanisms for me and for this family. I mean, I was the cook, so I would make sure that, as much as I could possibly can. And then we had all of the fast food places shut down. So we had
That was a hard one.
so that was torture for you, Chelsea. So what we eat and how we exercise and taking fresh air and stuff was really part 2 of our coping strategy, and I believe it is also connected to our spirituality.
Yes.
When you feel well, and your mind is clear, you're able to have a good perspective, you're able to think well and clear, and so that was important. So I just wanted to go back there just to make that point.
One last thing, because it really bringing up things and why decisions were made. We were talking about all the perks about the online content, but one thing, so it kind of made me very lazy because I didn't have to go to church, you didn't have to get up and stuff like that, so it was easy to sleep and I just turn on the TV or turn on whatever and take in the service. So I kind of made it my decision that I have to join something. So I became more active with like praise team to help my spiritual life, because I could see it going on in a way where it's just like, well, I really don't have to do nothing, and I could use the excuse, COVID, added social distance.
Yes.
That was like the excuse now to not doing things, and all, because people follow the protocols if they want to go and do something, but when it comes to something, they say, well, I can't do it because COVID. So I really made it my decision and my thing to say, well, I'm going to participate. And I find, as a family, how we cope together, we participated in a lot of things during the COVID, with programs and saying yes to it and coming and just like talking as a family, I think that was something that we coped, just be able to talk. Because we like to talk.
As you're sharing, Chelsea, I wanted to share, and this is really Chad's story, and he can share more if he wants, but just in terms of being open and honest. During that time, of course, there's a lot of deaths, a lot of loss happening. I, as a chaplain, as a counselor, I dealt with it a lot. But my son also dealt with it on his job. And I think he came face to face with what grief and loss and stuff was. And I think it brought out some questions for him. You want
to share some?
I don't know if you want to share. His supervisor or his, died. She was in the hospital. And, so there were some questions. And during this time, a lot of people, because of what they experienced, in terms of grief and loss, they questioned.
Yes.
They questioned their faith. They questioned God. They questioned reality. They questioned what is happening. They questioned their future. There were lots of questions. And in worship, and the reason why I brought it up, because in worship, I would hear the questions, and we had to answer the questions. And worship time was extended even longer, because now we were talking about different views and different ideas, and that's a reality. And so though spirituality was something that really helped hope, there were a lot of people who during this time would have lost
Yes.
it didn't make sense.
Yes.
It didn't make sense to them during this time. And that's okay, because pain does cause us to question.
Yes.
Crises cause us to find our values and to find what is important. And that has happened. I saw it happening to clients. I saw it happen to people who I'm working with. And even in our own home, we had to answer questions, difficult questions. The pandemic lasted 3 years, well, 2+, and it's still on. And during that time, my teens became young adults. And so things that they would have normally just taken because mommy and dad said so, this was the time where they were now searching for themselves. They were now asking the question for themselves and, trying to find it. And I think they're still there, trying to forge their own road in terms of that. And many homes are going through that experience,
I think sometimes we take our spirituality for granted when things are going good. So there's no pandemic, there's no curfew, there's no lockdown. You live in a safe neighborhood, and and so everything is good between you and God. But then something happens and your whole world is shaken, and you now have to put your faith to the test.
Yes.
You now have to draw from the faith that you said you had. And I think that really was the testing point. And so we're not here posturing as if our faith took us through.
Yes.
That's not the case at all. There were, as Barbara said, difficult questions. There were challenges. There were meltdowns. There were shaking fists in the face of God. Those kinds of things. So it really was. Yes. So spirituality did figure very prominently during, and you're still trying to clarify your own faith.
Of course.
Is existence meaningless? Was this, death? So God, death just happening around and you doing nothing, and so you really had to depend on your faith to take you through.
Yeah.
So it was important.
And COVID has proven to be one of those experiences that either knock you down completely or would bring out some of the beauty that you may have in you that you never knew that you had, in order to transition to move through a crisis. But we're talking about how we're coping. Let's be real in talking about the fears that we have. If we're anxious, like when you think about COVID, how does that really affect you? You wonder what's going to happen in the future. What's going to happen if you're going to have your own family? if you're going to attain those goals that you want, when you hear about monkeypox again, are you anxious? How do you cope with that anxiety?
I started looking at the facts. Because I think when you don't have facts, that's when panic and chaos will continue and live in. You know, so I think when it comes to monkeypox, I think it's a sexually transmitted virus.
Is it?
Okay.
I think it's more that, is it? It's not an STI, but it's more of that type of.
Okay.
Let me make sure.
To be honest.
Don't put me on that.
I heard something like that on BBC, but I'm not sure.
I read something of that way, and as good Christians, if that's really the case, I don't have to worry about monkeypox. you know, but do some more research. But I think it's more like just getting facts and not just going into just blindness, just like, oh my gosh, and just whatever you hear, panic one time. So I'm not really worried. I think because I experienced a pandemic before, I would listen to the authorities if this is what have to happen.
Okay.
They know why they said that, and I'm not just going to try to fight it because the fighting doesn't help. The fighting makes you more anxious because you fighting, and what you going to do about it?
Yes.
Because you're going to do your own thing, and then you're going to get the virus. You know, I saw a lot of that. I had a lot of people I know who they didn't want to listen to the authority, and they wanted to do their own thing. It's a conspiracy. It's this. You want to do that. It's a shit. And they got COVID. Some of their family members died. All those things. You know, you have to look at the facts. You have to be reasonable. And if you really do trust God, you have to ask Him to show you the truth. And just do what you have to do.
Yeah.
Chelsea said something important there, because I was thinking, you know, experience is really a good teacher.
Oh, the best.
It's the best teacher. And before this, I would have never lived through a pandemic. Never, you know, you only see it again on movies. You know, you see the thing. But having lived through this, it makes me a little bit more confident or have a little bit more experience that if I'm to go through this again, I have been through it, I have survived it, and I can face it again.
Okay.
So the anxiousness or the fear for anything that probably will come again is not there because I have been through this one.
Okay.
Yes. My father-in-law would always say, this is just a trial.
Oh yes.
The test is coming.
The real test coming.
Yeah.
You know, and that created some anxiety initially because you think if this is the trial, what to look forward to. But what brings on my concerns for the future is not really some kind of global pandemic that will wipe us out, but really our response to it. And it is somehow you saw the worst in people.
Yeah.
You know, you saw the worst in leaders. You know, rather than leaders cooperate, you saw them get more polarized and antagonistic. You know, and so really and truly, I wasn't anxious about the virus killing me. You know, I was more anxious about the events surrounding our response. And it just took me back to that text that says, men's heart feeling them for fear. And how we behave, you know, because we're fearful. Just today I became, I think Chelsea was in the car with me. And I didn't want, I always listen to the news. My radio is locked onto the news station. But today I turned news on and I didn't want to hear it.
Wow.
No, when I turned the car on, the news comes on.
Okay.
So I didn't want to hear it, and I just put some music on. And I think that really is my coping, my approach.
Okay.
You know, how I will deal with it. I don't want to hear anymore.
Sometimes that is necessary.
You know?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's
Because
necessary to tune.
just-
Yeah.
You know, all the conspiracy theories and stuff.
Some of the anxieties that have came out from me were not really surrounding the pandemic itself or even the virus or anything, but how much the pandemic would have allowed people to slow down and be so introspective at that time. It's almost like it forced a mirror into your face. So a lot of the anxieties and stuff I would have felt was more about like who I am as a person, what I want to be, and those kind of introspective kind of questions that we was forced thinking, nothing else to think about, nothing else to do. The fastness of life wasn't there to really distract you from, so it would have just been our routine. And we fall into that routine of we get up, go to work, come home, sleep, get up, go to work, come home, sleep, school work, whatever it is. And you don't get a chance to really think about, okay, what it is, who you are as a person, what you believe, where you stand for. That kind of stuff. So a lot of my anxiety came from that rather than the pandemic itself.
I like that metaphor. The pandemic forced a mirror into your face. So, for 30 seconds, I want you to share something. Share something with viewers out there that can help them. Maybe this person is struggling through a crisis right now. It may not be related to COVID-19 or anything of the sort. Maybe a personal crisis, a crisis in their family. Share something with them that can help boost them up, can help encourage them, can help them to cope in their crisis.
I would say crises don't last forever. They always come to an end. Any crisis we can think of, any dark, traumatic situations. Let's take African slavery, that ended. Slavery of the Israelites, that ended. Terminal diseases, it ends. Sometimes it ends in death, but crisis never last. And it comes to an end, and so that's what buoys me up. That's my hope. That the situation you are in now is not permanent. It may seem lengthy, but it's not permanent.
Yeah, I like that. The old people always say the longest rope have an end. The longest rope have an end. One of the things that I kept repeating over this pandemic, when I talk with persons or when I do any session, was that when we are facing the unknown, trust what is known. Rely on what you do know. And for me, that would have been my spiritual practices. So when you're going through a crisis, I relied on my spiritual practices: prayer, studying of God's word, fellowship as much as I can, and repeating especially God's promises to me. That really helped me during my crisis, during this time. And for anyone who is going through a crisis, I can't say that I don't know what your faith is, I don't know where you are, but I can just tell you what works for me. And just relying on the power of God and knowing that He got this world in His hand, that He is still in control, and that His words are sure as money in the bank, really took me through. And I want to recommend, if you know Him, continue trusting in Him, continue leaning on Him, continue reading His word. And if you don't know Him, I want to recommend a personal and intimate relationship with God. It will change everything about what you're dealing with.
Don't trust in what you don't know, trust in what you know.
Yes. Yeah. And that's what I was going to say in the sense of looking at the facts, because we have a habit of all the things that we cannot control or we don't know, we hyper-focus on that, and we send ourselves into a spiral. So to deal with crisis or to cope, look at the facts. It could just be one thing. It doesn't have to be a big list. Just look at one and try to work on that. If the fact is, well, I have to stay inside, I do not know what is happening, then that is the fact. How are we going to move from that? I'm going to look and see if I could make sure my support team is next door. What I could do to make sure that I don't go crazy. Like, if you just build up on one small fact, it would help put everything to focus and will make it seem like you have everything in control. I think what we do, why we go into a crisis mode is because we feel we lack control.
Yes.
I think crises have a way of scrambling our minds and our thoughts and making things very cloudy and unclear. So advice I'll give to anyone who is going through a crisis would be to organize your thoughts. If that's by speaking it out loud to someone who is unbiased or who you feel will pick a side or give you some kind of advice that you don't want to hear. If you don't have anyone to talk to, not just sitting down and thinking in your mind. You might have a way of going in all directions that you can't control. So if it is that you need to get a pen to paper and write down what you're thinking at that point in time, or organize your thoughts, so you could have a journal and each day you could document what you're thinking, how you feel. In a crisis, the best way to face it is a clear mind and have a clear head. So anything you could do to get to that point, I think, will help.
I like that. As a counselor, don't stay by yourself. Don't isolate.
Yeah.
Reach out, and I like, of course, the journaling.
Yes.
No, we did.
I taught you that. Did I teach you that?
We learned a psalm, actually.
Oh, okay. Yes.
That sounds like a good place to wrap everything together. Let's hear this psalm.
This was real stuff.
That's all right.
So, it's actually, we even before the pandemic, we would learn portions of the Bible. But during the pandemic, we chose Psalm 91. Right? And so every day we would recite until we get to the end. And
Very hard.
It's very difficult.
It's amazing how difficult it is to memorize passages now as an adult.
So maybe we can say, as much as we know, he that dwelleth in the secret place of the Most High shall abide under the shadow of the Almighty. I will say of the Lord, He is my refuge and my fortress. My God, in Him will I trust. Surely He shall deliver thee from the snare of the fowler and from the noisome pestilence. He shall cover thee with His feathers, and under His wings shalt thou trust. His truth shall be thy shield and buckler. Thou shalt not be afraid for the terror by night, nor for the arrow that flieth by day, nor for the pestilence that walketh in darkness, nor for the destruction that wasteth at noonday. 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Only with thine eyes shalt thou behold and see the reward of the wicked, because thou hast made the Lord, which is thy refuge, even the Most High, thy habitation. There shall no evil befall thee, neither shall any plague come nigh thy dwelling. For He shall give His angels charge over thee, to keep thee in all thy ways. They shall bear thee up in their wings, lest thou dash thy foot against a stone.
Thou shalt tread upon the lion and the adder, the young lion and the dragon shall thou trample under feet. And the last three verses is the one that gives it. So I will read it because that's the one that gives us a little trouble. It says, because He had set His love upon me, therefore will I deliver Him. I will set Him on high because He had known my name. He shall call upon me and I will answer him. I will be with him in trouble. I will deliver him and honor him. With long life will I satisfy him and show him my salvation. This psalm took us through, and of course, I don't get in a preacher mode here, but every verse of this psalm was a promise during this pandemic. And certainly it is something that can carry us for the rest of our lives.
One word, beautiful. Beautiful family, beautiful experiences. It may not be a beautiful crisis, but we have gotten some valuable lessons from the Seeley family. Thank you so much for joining JC 24/7 for this initial interview with the Seeley clan. See you next time.